Hello and welcome to our tutorial. This will be a short tutorial on weight painting. So this is our character as we have left her, and that's her there. And if I go into so I hit G, so you know she can wave and say hello. So I forgot to do this. Where am I? And Logitech. Here we go. Turn that on. So what we're going to do is we're going to, so she's fully articulate. She's joined up, but I haven't used any weight painting. So we'll have a look at weight painting and what it does and how it can speed up the process. So first of all, how do we access weight painting? Well, if you select your mesh and you go into weight painting mode, when you right click on a bone, you pop back out, which is slightly annoying. And if you draw, you paint, and it does stuff, but you don't seem to have any control, and that's because there's a specific way to get into this. So you select your rig, and then you go into pose mode. You select everything, and then come back there. So you go into, you shift select your mesh, so both are selected now, and then you go into weight painting. Now if I go into solid mode, now because you have both selected, I can now select right click on a bone, and that bone will then show me in color what the influence is. So let's just have a little chat about the influence and have a look at tools here. So if there was a color chart, it would go red to blue, and red would be 100% association. So this head bone is selected, so anywhere that is red, all of the verts that are painted red here, all the area painted red, it has 100% association with this bone, and everywhere that is blue is 100% free from influence from that bone. So if I select, say, this middle spine bone here, so you can see that these red areas here are 100% connected to that. And then this top of the shoulder, other areas, they're all blue, so they have no effect. Now what we can do, if I go to, say, mix here, so these are just different ways to set up the character, different ways to or to draw on the influence, basically. So go to mix. So we have our weight here, and then we have the strength of the brush. So in terms of how these work in relationship to each other, this is sort of like if this is set to 0, all I can paint is blue. If this is set to red, then I can paint all the way from blue to red. And then this gives us the, where in between in that scope we are. I may have to, the strength of the brush also, I may have to paint 1 or 2 or 3 times in order to get from 0 to full. So let's have a look here. So let's select this, select a bone that we might want a mixed influence on. So if we select this bone here. Now, let's say we didn't want the bottom half of this, so below the knee joint, to have so much influence. So if I paint here, so I'm adding influence, and Control Z. If I go to, say, subtract, I'm subtracting influence, okay? And you can see that the color scale on this is, so blue is no influence, and it goes to green, and then from green it'll go to yellow. So from blue to yellow, yellow to green, and then green up towards blue. You can see we've got a light blue here. So now there's less influence on this knee area. Get rid of that. And now I will select this bottom bone, and now there's areas that aren't terribly influenced. Now I can add some influence. So instead of subtract, we'll go to add. And again, we've strength set low, so I can add some influence here to this area. So now let's try and articulate. I'll click on this bone and go G, and we can see it move. So let's kind of have an extreme example. So let's click here. Let's remove. So I'll go back to subtract. Let's remove a lot of the influence here. So I'm going to increase my brush strength. I'm just going to do this as a. Well, it's not going to be good. It's going to end up in strange results. But now click on this bone and go G, and you can see that the foot is still associated with the bones below. The leg, the hip is still working, but I've removed all influence from this area here of from the bone. So we can get this. So in terms of how weight painting works, we can get it really wrong. So if I go back to add. So I want this bone to actually have influence over this area here. Now let's paint it in here. We won't. Some of it's gone red, but so now let's try and move that again. So G. So there's kind of a lag between the movement of the bone and the movement of the mesh. So the more influence you have, the more kind of rigidly the mesh will follow the bone. Now, one thing to be very careful of when you're weight painting is not to have. It's very easy to do that, and then you get this effect. Okay, so just be very careful when you're weight painting that you don't end up by accident painting on a part of the mesh that you do not want influence to be painted on. There are ways to mask. You can use some of these tools here, so I can actually draw. I can select faces, and then those faces are the only area I can draw on. So if I select these areas here, this mask, now when I draw, I can only draw on that area. So if I go to add, I'm only adding on the faces that I've selected. So if I draw then here or over here, nothing has been added. It's only in this area here. And then when I'm finished, I can turn off the mask. So Blender has built into it sort of a nice system. And obviously, if you've got a very high polygon model with thousands of small faces, that's maybe not the most effective tool. But just be aware. So this little tool down here, you can select faces, and then they're the only faces that you can draw on. Okay, so that's weight painting. Some people love weight painting. They think it is the only way to associate influence with deformation of bones, or the deformation of the mesh in relation to the bone. I normally do a mixture of both of vertex groups, and then when I'm finished doing vertex groups, I'll go back and do kind of subtle things with weight painting, like say, for example, sleeves. I wanted the sleeve to maybe be associated with a wrist as well as an arm, or so if there was a part where there are two bones that should share an influence on an area, like if you had a long coat and you wanted it to move with both sort of the spine or the sort of the bend bone, and maybe with the hips or the leg bones as well. So you go back and you'd paint it so that it had influence from two areas, not just one. But as I said, just be careful not to paint in the wrong place, or you'll get very undesirable results. Okay, so we'll leave it there for now. This is just sort of an introduction, so you have some of the ideas in it, and I would suggest you have a play with some of these tools.